about introversion and extroversion. We can start there, actually, is that, you know, you can imagine maybe the introverts of the world might actually like this because, you know, the social interaction is what is draining for an introvert, even if it is over a video screen. So having an avatar, you know, do it for you might actually be a way to, you know, save some energy or something, and just take the pressure off of having to interact the whole time that you're in a meeting. But having said that, you know, like I still wonder what you can still just switch your camera off, so and achieve the same thing, like you're just on a conference call or something. So
yeah, but you know, sometimes people expect that level of interaction that you've put out there. Now, look, for introverts, I think almost certainly you go to an avatar, and where you can tell the introverts straight away in a sort of, I guess, a much larger meeting where you might have 20 or 30 people, because the introverts don't put on their camera and then pretend they don't have a very stable internet connection, and that's why. But you know, because really, if you've got nothing to contribute at a meeting, you know, all you're going to do is sit there and nod anyway. I think, you know, Zoom really plays into the hands of the introverted, extroverted personalities, in that extroverted personalities probably will dominate in Zoom. They dominate, obviously, quite often in social settings as well. But I don't think extroverts get a return on their extroversion as well through video conferencing, whereas for introverts, you get a much higher return because you can turn off your camera or you can just put up an avatar that just nods for 45 minutes.
Well, it's an interesting way to look at it. And I just find it, the technology, and I guess we can talk about how the pandemic's impacted this as well, but the technology has kind of allowed for communication methods to shake up those sort of dynamics on what's available for introverts and extroverts or whatever. You know, the traditional model being that you know, if an introvert goes to a party, it's like they're having to spend their energy capital going there and interacting, and then they're poor at the end, whereas the extrovert goes to the party poor and, you know, makes huge gains at the party, and they feel like they're on cloud nine at the end. And but that is in terms of actual in-person interaction when you're talking, and that's kind of the traditional model. But now we've got like this other sort of component taking place where, you know, we've had a pandemic. There's been a huge reliance on having to rely on all these tech tools to, you know, communicate and get work done. It now looks like that this is going to become a feature of work. The pandemic has probably accelerated this by, you know, 5-10 years. Like, we might have ended up there eventually anyway, but it's now brought it forward. So if anything, I would think that it would actually be a help to introverts as well, that you've got all of these communication methods that provide a little bit more of a barrier to spending that energy capital that I was talking about before. On the flip side, in terms of extroverts, I don't see extroverts enjoying sitting at home, you know, web conferencing all day. So they're still going to need to go out. They're the ones that are still going to need to go into the office. They're the ones that are going to, you know, get everyone out for Friday night drinks or whatever, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wonder if if you think about all of that together, all of the dynamics of it, that you can potentially get workplaces that don't have to have everyone in all the time. So you get smaller workplaces, smaller tenancies, smaller offices, and then you just think of the whole, you know, ramifications of all of that on, you know, how many buildings do you need in a CBD now, and all that sort of thing, and also just the dispersal of geographical location. You know, if you're introverted and you get a job that you can work entirely off your laptop at your home, you can probably, you know, be 2 hours out of the CBD and live there and never have to leave.
And that's right. And I think that's probably what's miscommunicated when a lot of employers have concerns about the work from home routine is that for introverts, it's really easy to get lost from the fabric of the organisation. And I think people have to realise that it's not just enough to do your job, you have to socially interact. And I think there's a danger, the more introverted you are, the more prone you are to excluding yourself from any additional effort. So it's very interesting. You know, whether or not avatars become a thing will become, you know, I think really centre around practice and protocol and whether or not people, you know, allow it, because effectively, to me, putting an avatar up would mean you're not listening. Yeah. It's no different to somebody checking their emails during a meeting in person. So, you know, it's an interesting sort of idea, and they're very closely linked, these two topics. But I do wonder how it'll play out.
Indeed. I just the other thing, I guess, just to finish up, is just that sort of whole general discussion of introverts versus extroverts as well, in the sense that, I mean, it's an age-old kind of topic and has been, I think, in some ways misunderstood. Like, you know, it'd be easy to say that an introvert is shy, but no, not necessarily. I was reading the other day that, you know, if you take a famous example, someone like Richard Branson is apparently an introvert. You can't say the man's shy, but he's still, maybe in that sort of social context, he still finds it not as, you know, that sort of, that it's an energy drain for him to do that sort of thing. But if he goes out and he's excited about launching, you know, his latest Virgin Galactic ship or something, he's like larger than life kind of thing. And similar in reverse to that is the idea that if, you know, all extroverts are confident, you know, that is not the, you know, that isn't the case. They're not necessarily all outgoing, all confident. It's just that it's more about the energy level, etc., in terms of, you know, what you get out of a social interaction. And I just find that that's a lot of that's interesting, because I feel like regardless of how long this topic has been around, that continually is misunderstood. An example, of course, too, even if, like for myself, is that a lot of people at work, particularly after going into a more managerial role, have just automatically assumed that I'm an extrovert because, you know, I speak up, you know, at meetings, I, you know, seem to know what to say in certain situations or whatever. But that just comes from experience in the job and doing all that sort of stuff. But I'm actually an introvert by nature. And I just find that that's really interesting in terms of what people understand these concepts to be.
Well, that's right. And I think, you know, an important part of functioning as part of a team is understanding where you sit on that scale, you know, and for people to appreciate that everyone has a different approach. And as you've said, you know, extroverts can be quite shy and introverts can even be quite outgoing. There's not necessarily a certain typecast, but I think the great leveler is, you know, the video tool, you know, and work from home. And you'll see that the introverts would work from home 5 days a week. Extroverts would, you know, tend to want to come in more. So it's very interesting. I think, you know, there are a lot of things about the COVID situation and what's happened with work over the last 12 to 18 months that probably haven't been recognised yet, but in the next couple of years, and certainly with the arrival of avatars, will